My name is Dr. Samuel R. Halden, and I serve as a senior containment biologist at the Northgate Zoological Research Facility, though the staff call it something far less official, the Zoo for Monsters. The nickname stuck long before I got here, long before any of us realized that nothing inside these walls required superstition or folklore to be terrifying. Every specimen in our care is a product of nature, climate pressure, biological stress, genetic drift, or environmental mutation. Nothing supernatural, nothing paranormal. Just evolution showing us the ugly shapes it can take when the world pushes life too far. I've worked here for 8 years, and today is the first time I've felt like I might not make it through my shift alive. The day began before sunrise, the way it always does. I clocked in at 5:12, passing through the triple-door airlock and letting the scanner sweep my ID tag. The hallway's LED strips flickered with that usual bluish hum that makes everyone look a little more exhausted than they already are. I walked past the observation labs, expecting another routine morning of feeding schedules, health checks, and environmental calibrations. But even then, before I knew what would happen later, I felt something was off. The facility is usually loud with mechanical systems, ventilation drones, and the choked growls of the larger enclosures. But this morning it was too quiet. Not silent, but muffled, like someone had wrapped the entire complex in insulation. Shift Control called me to Sector C almost immediately. They said there was abnormal movement in Enclosure C7, one of our isolation habitats reserved for high-risk mutated carnivores. The specimen inside, designated C7/Arctos variant, is a malformed derivative of a brown bear population found starving in a collapse zone near an old mining region. Its bone density is nearly doubled, its jaw alignment is asymmetrical, and its forelimbs grew with a twisted curvature that gave it a low, loping gait. It shouldn't be able to run fast, but it can. It shouldn't be able to climb, but it does. It shouldn't vocalize the way it does, those breathy, rhythmic moans like a person trying not to cry, but it does. C7 wasn't scheduled for feeding until noon. At this hour, it should have been asleep. I met Officer Klein outside the viewing chamber. His face looked pale under the fluorescence, and he was gripping his tranquilizer kit like it might try to escape. "Sam," he said, keeping his voice low. "It's pacing again." That wasn't unusual, but his expression told me something else was happening. We stepped into the observation bay. Through the reinforced glass, the enclosure appeared empty at first, just a simulated patch of alpine undergrowth, rock slabs, and temperature-controlled fog drifting in the corners. Then I saw the outline in the mist. C7 was pressed into a far corner, its massive body trembling, but not from cold. It was staring upward at the ventilation grate, the one near the ceiling, as if waiting for something to crawl out of it. I checked the thermal monitor. No foreign heat signatures. The airflow readings were normal. But C7 didn't break its gaze, didn't blink once. "Did something get in there?" Klein asked. "No," I said automatically, though I wasn't fully convinced. "Nothing could fit." The animal suddenly chuffed. A deep, broken exhale, and took 3 awkward steps backward like it was afraid. I'd seen C7 angry, hungry, disoriented, overstimulated. I had never seen it afraid. We logged the behavior and moved on to the morning rounds. But the unease followed me like a shadow. I kept glancing at vents, doors, corners, listening for something that wasn't supposed to be there. By the time I reached Sector D, the discomfort had settled in my ribs like a second heartbeat. Sector D houses our smallest and most unpredictable specimens, mostly bats, rodents, and burrowing mammals exhibiting irregular morphologies. My assignment was a health check on D12, an echolocation-dependent species resembling a mole that had developed elongated digits and a skull shape resembling a funnel. It emits high-frequency calls that vibrate through stainless steel, and if the room is quiet enough, you can feel the pulses in your teeth. But when I arrived, the door to D12's lab was already open. Not wide, just cracked. Just enough for you to think someone had entered but forgot to close it fully. Except no one should have been here before me. The overnight staff had been redirected to an emergency in medical 2 hours earlier, and the logs confirmed no other badge access in this hallway. I pushed the door open slowly. The lights were off. D12. I whispered out of habit more than anything. My voice bounced back to me, softened by the darkness. I reached for the switch, but halfway across the room, my hand froze. There were marks on the wall, long streaks of condensation trailing downward like something had scraped a wet cloth across the metal surfaces. Not claw marks, not smears of dirt. Moisture, cool to the touch when I tested it. The air felt heavier than normal, almost damp. D12's habitat chamber was sealed, but the temperature gauge beside it blinked red. Door unlatched. That shouldn't have been possible. I had latched it myself yesterday. I approached the chamber slowly. Inside, the substrate looked disturbed. Little mounds of soil pushed outward like something had been tunneling aggressively. The specimen was not visible. D12 rarely surfaced, but it always responded to light. Even if I whispered, it usually answered with a trill. This time, nothing. What unsettled me wasn't the silence. It was the faint tremble in the floor, like something moving beneath it, slow, dragging motions that made the metal vibrate against my boots. That was the moment I realized today wasn't going to be routine. Something was wrong across multiple sectors. The animals weren't behaving like themselves. Each one was reacting to something we couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't measure. Something environmental, maybe chemical, maybe structural. Or maybe something had entered the facility without triggering alarms. And the worst part was still ahead of me, because by noon, we would discover that one of the mutated specimens wasn't just behaving strangely. It was missing. By the time I left Sector D, the tremors under the floor had stopped, but the uneasiness hadn't. I kept replaying the details in my head. The condensation streaks, the unlatched chamber, the silence from D12. All of it pointed to a containment breach, but not the kind we'd trained for. Our drills focused on aggression, escape behavior, or structural failure. None of them prepared us for animals acting like something invisible was stalking the corridors with them. I walked quickly, trying not to look like I was hurrying, because the last thing this facility needs is panic spreading through the staff like a virus. At 7:45, the intercom pinged overhead, 3 sharp tones that meant priority, not emergency. I stopped walking. That tone rarely played outside of full staff meetings. The voice that followed belonged to Director Halpern. He never spoke over the intercom unless something was seriously wrong. All personnel with clearance level 3 and above, report to Command Room B immediately. This is an operational priority. I had clearance 5. Command Room B sits in the central administrative block, behind 2 biometric doors and a pressure scanner. When I reached it, half a dozen people were already inside, keepers, medical staff, and 2 security officers. Everyone looked like they'd woken up inside a nightmare and hadn't fully realized it yet. Halpern stood at the front of the room, hands clasped behind his back. His posture was rigid even for him. "We have an unexplained behavioral disturbance affecting multiple sectors," he said without preamble. C7, D12, B4, and the aviary wing have all logged irregular activity within the last 3 hours. A murmur passed through the room. B4 housed our largest herbivore specimens, mutated ungulates, mostly. They were typically placid, if not entirely predictable. If they were agitated, something was wrong with the environment. Halpern tapped the screen behind him. A map of the facility appeared, sectors glowing in different colors. Environmental controls show normal ranges, he continued. Airflow, chemical filtration, pressure variances, and temperature regulation are all stable. That leaves two possibilities: an unknown contaminant we haven't detected, or, he paused, choosing his words carefully, an internal breach. Someone inhaled sharply, but no one interrupted. The animals are displaying fear responses, Halpern said. Not aggression, not territoriality. Fear. That word settled over the room like smoke. Animals don't fear nothing. They fear something. Dr. Halden, Halpern said, turning to me. You inspected C7 this morning. Did you observe anything that might indicate a stimulus in the enclosure? Yes, I said. It was staring at the ventilation grate. It wouldn't take its eyes off it. Did you see movement? No. But C7 behaved as if something was inside the vent. Halpern nodded grimly, then shifted his focus to Reyes, one of our senior keepers. You inspected B4? Reyes swallowed hard. The herd was pressed against the far wall. All of them, like they were trying to avoid the main access door. She shook her head. They wouldn't even approach their feeding stations. Reyes worked with animals tougher than most people I'd ever met. Seeing her shaken scared me more than anything. Halpern exhaled slowly. All right, we proceed with full diagnostic sweeps. Dr. Halden, you'll join the environmental review team in Sector D. The missing specimen. He stopped. The room froze. Missing specimen. That phrase doesn't get used lightly. Proper containment protocol states that an animal isn't considered missing until 10 minutes of confirmed absence, multiple sensor failures, and a manual visual check come up empty. By the time leadership uses that phrasing aloud, the situation is already bad. Which unit? I asked, my voice dry. Unit F9. A chill snapped down my spine. The F-wing contains our aquatic and semi-aquatic specimens, some of the most dangerous organisms in the entire compound, not because of aggression, but because of unpredictability. F9 in particular worried everyone. It housed a deep burrow amphibian variant discovered near a geothermal fissure system. Most of its anatomy wasn't fully understood. Its thermal tolerance bordered on impossible, and its respiration patterns changed based on stress, mimicking low-frequency groans that echo through pipes. It wasn't large, only around a meter long, but extremely elusive. F9 could compress its cartilage plates to slip through spaces smaller than design parameters predicted. We reinforced its enclosure twice since acquisition. How long has F9 been unaccounted for? I asked. 37 minutes, Halpern replied. Too long. Before anyone could ask another question, the intercom chirped again, the same 3 tones from earlier, but followed by a fourth. Security priority. A calm voice replaced the static. All personnel stand by. Motion sensors have detected movement in Corridor E North. No scheduled activity in that area. Security teams en route. E North? That corridor connected directly to the ventilation maintenance spine. The same one that connected to C7's enclosure. Klein looked at me from across the room. His expression was the same one he'd had this morning, tight, nervous, like someone waiting for a building to collapse. Halpern pointed to the door. Everyone move. We're splitting into 4 teams. Dr. Halden, you're with me. We rushed into the hallway. The facility's lighting had shifted to the pale amber glow used during elevated alerts. It wasn't bright enough to be comforting, just enough to let you see the edges of your own fear. As we approached E-North, security had already sealed off both ends of the corridor. Officer Denton stood beside the bulkhead, checking his tablet. Infrared shows intermittent movement, he said. Small, fast. No ID tag. Could be F9, but the displacement pattern doesn't match its profile. What do you mean? Halpern asked. Sir, whatever's moving isn't staying on the floor. I felt that in my stomach. Ceiling? Halpern asked. Sometimes ceiling, sometimes wall. Pattern is erratic. The hairs on my arms lifted, not from panic, but from realization. Because the condensation streaks in D12 hadn't been horizontal. They had been diagonal. Something had been climbing. Halpern stepped forward. Open the bulkhead. We sweep manually. Sir, that's not recommended, Denton said carefully. Do it. Denton complied. The bulkhead hissed, then slid open. Enorth stretched out before us. A long corridor of pipes, shadow lines, and maintenance grids. The ventilation spine ran behind the left wall. The air smelled faintly metallic, and the lighting flickered in irregular intervals, like the system couldn't decide whether to trust itself. We stepped inside. Every footstep sounded too loud. Halfway down the corridor, I heard it. A faint scratching, like claws skittering lightly across metal. Not fast, not approaching, testing, listening. My breath caught in my throat. F9 wasn't the only thing unaccounted for. And whatever else was moving through this facility, the animals had sensed it before we did. We held our position in the corridor, every person frozen the way prey freezes when it realizes the grass around it is moving. The scratching stopped the moment our lights swept the ceiling. Not faded, stopped. Like whatever was up there understood the rhythm of our movements and was adjusting to it. Denton raised his tranquilizer rifle, angling the barrel upward, but Halpern made a small motion with his hand, halting him. We didn't know what we were dealing with yet. Firing blind in a pressurized corridor was the kind of mistake that shut down facilities. A droplet fell from above and hit my cheek. Cold, viscous, not water. I wiped it with my glove and felt a tacky, mucus-like consistency. Not blood, not saliva, amphibian, but thicker than anything F9 ever produced. Halpern noticed my reaction. Sample? Already got it, I said, sealing it in a sterile pouch. The corridor remained still, every flickering light stuttering like a dying breath. We advanced cautiously, scanning every vent, every seam in the wall, every line where ceiling met pipe. Denton's rifle twitched at shadows that weren't shadows. Klein walked a few paces behind me, breathing through his nose in quiet, rapid bursts, like he was trying not to make sound. Movement, sector junction ahead, Denton whispered. The tablet in his hand pulsed red in irregular intervals. Heat signature on the wall, about 1 meter off the ground. 1 meter, I repeated. F9 stays low unless it's cornered. I know, Denton muttered. That's why I don't like this. As we approached the junction, the scratching started again. Softer this time, almost hesitant. Then a low vibration thrummed through the pipes, causing the metal to buzz under our boots. Not loud enough to set off alarms, but enough that everyone felt it in their ribs. Halpern raised a hand. Stop! The vibration continued for 3 seconds. Then silence. Something was communicating. Not with us, with the infrastructure. Vibrations, moisture trails, erratic climbing patterns. F9 didn't behave like this normally, and nothing else in the facility matched these signatures. We reached the junction. A grate hung loose from the ceiling. Hinges bent inward as if forced from the inside. That alone wasn't shocking. F9 could potentially squeeze through a gap like that. But the trail leading out wasn't smeared the way F9's movement usually was. Instead of a broad glide pattern, we saw thin streaks, 3 parallel lines repeating every foot or so. 3 finger-like digits, I murmured. Not fins, not plates, digits. D12, Klein whispered. My stomach tightened. D12 had elongated digits, yes, but they were delicate, sensory-focused. They weren't strong enough to pry open a reinforced vent. And even if it had escaped, it couldn't climb vertically. Its muscle distribution wasn't built for it. I looked at Halpern. We're dealing with more than one breach. He didn't respond right away. Finally, he exhaled, quiet but steady. We press on. We made it halfway to the next bulkhead before the corridor lights dimmed. Not flickering this time, but slowly fading like a curtain lowering. Emergency strips along the floor brightened automatically, casting the space in a sterile blue glow. Lighting grids compensating for a drain, Denton muttered, checking his tablet. But I don't see any power spike. Not electrical, I said. Acoustic. The pipes vibrated again. Once, sharp, almost like a knock, then another. Pattern. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. It was coming from the ventilation spine. Before anyone could react, something small and dark dropped from the overhead vent and hit the floor with a wet slap. Klein jumped back, nearly slamming into the wall. Denton swung his rifle down, aiming at the motionless shape. It crouched. It was a molt, a shed layer of epidermal tissue, thin, translucent, stretched like a deflated balloon. Amphibious but irregular. Some parts thicker, others nearly thread-like. The edges trembled from the residual vibration of the pipes. Not F9, I whispered. Not its texture. Not its composition. Halpern stared down at it, jaw tight. Meaning, something else is shedding. And it's growing. Before we could process that, the intercom crackled overhead, distorted, staticky, but audible. All teams, be advised, the operator said, voice shaking despite the attempt at professionalism. We have visual confirmation of movement in the central atrium. Multiple sensors tripped simultaneously. Unknown specimen. Do not engage alone. Halpern didn't hesitate. Move. Now. We sprinted back toward the central block, bypassing the decontamination chamber and cutting through the service corridor. The farther we got from E-North, the louder the facility seemed to become again. Vent systems humming normally, distant animals vocalizing in agitation. But their distress didn't make me feel better. If anything, it meant whatever was moving had left its earlier hunting ground. The central atrium came into view, a cavernous space lined with reinforced glass enclosures and administrative walkways. Security officers had already formed a perimeter around the base of the observation pit. What do we have? Halpern asked sharply. Officer Madsen pointed to the pit. Movement inside. We don't know how it got in there. Cameras are down. Looks like something covered the lenses with secretion. We can only see shadows. We approached the edge. The pit was dim, illuminated only by emergency strips. At first I saw nothing. Then the shadows shifted. Something moved, smooth, fluid against the far wall. Not fast, not slow, testing the space. Its outline was distorted by distance and the low light, but I could tell immediately it wasn't F9. Too tall, too elongated through the torso, and the way it moved, half climbing, half folding around the contours of the wall, felt disturbingly intentional. Klein whispered, "What is that?" Denton raised his rifle again. "Permission to fire if necessary?" Halpern didn't answer. He was staring at the shape in the pit with an expression I'd never seen from him, uncertainty. He'd spent his entire career controlling environments, predicting outcomes, managing biological chaos with iron discipline. But now he didn't know what he was looking at. I stepped closer. Slowly, the shape turned. Even in the dim light, I saw the reflective sheen of moisture across its back. Its skin looked raw, new, like it had shed only minutes earlier. And its limbs, 3 long digits on each hand. D12, but not as it had been. It had grown, stretched. Its proportions no longer matched its documented biology. Something had accelerated its development in a way I didn't think was physically possible in such a short time. Unless it wasn't the only one. A second shape moved behind it. Smaller, faster. My breath tightened. It wasn't just multiple breaches. It was convergence, different mutated specimens interacting, influencing, or responding to the same environmental trigger. And whatever that trigger was, it had only begun. The larger shape lifted its head slightly. Not hostile, not afraid, listening. Then the pipes vibrated in unison, a low harmonic hum that spread through the atrium like a warning. The animals in every enclosure began crying out at once. Not random, not panicked. In unison, something was coming, and it wasn't inside the pit. It was behind us. Every person around the atrium froze when the animals erupted in that unified cry. It wasn't one species. It wasn't even one wing of the facility. It was all of them. Predators, herbivores, burrowers, nocturnal variants. Each one reacting as though the building itself had become hostile. The vibrations in the pipes grew louder, shifting from a low hum to a rhythmic pulse. I knew that pattern. I'd heard it only once, months ago, during an earthquake drill. Except this wasn't seismic. The frequency wasn't right. It was coming from inside the infrastructure, not the earth beneath us. Behind us, somewhere in the corridor leading toward the environmental hub, something moved. Not fast, not loud, just steady enough that your brain recognized the cadence as purposeful. Denton spun, rifle raised, but Halpern reached out and grabbed his arm. "Hold," he whispered. "Back up slowly." We formed a semicircle facing the source of the sound. The emergency lights cast long shadows across the polished floor, and every shadow felt too long, too mobile. My heartbeat matched the rhythm in the pipes. 3 pulses, pause, 3 more. Not a communication, not random, a biological signal. When the movement finally appeared, it wasn't dramatic. A vent panel near the floor shifted outward a few centimeters, pushed from the inside. A thin streak of condensation ran down the metal, dripping onto the ground. Then another push. The panel bent, hinges groaning. "F9, Klein whispered, though he already knew it wasn't. The panel finally gave way, clattering onto the floor. What crawled out wasn't the elongated amphibian we'd lost. It was something smaller, no bigger than a house cat, but wrong in proportions. The spine arched too high, the limbs bent like they lacked proper joints, and its skin glistened with a fresh-shed gloss. Another molt, a recent one. The animal paused halfway out of the vent, sniffing. Then it released a soft, trembling trill. D12's trill, but distorted, stretched into a lower register. My throat tightened. "It's a juvenile derivative," I murmured. "A growth stage we've never documented." Halpern shot me a look. "D12 can't reproduce." "No," I said quietly, "but it can adapt." The creature shifted, turning toward the atrium pit where the larger specimens waited. When it saw movement below, it vocalized softly, 3 notes, matching the pulse in the pipes. A signal. From inside the pit, the larger D12 variant answered with the same pattern. Denton swore under his breath. "They're coordinating." Before anyone could act, the juvenile derivative bolted, not toward the pit, but toward the opposite hallway, the one leading to the environmental hub. In 2 seconds it disappeared into a maintenance crack that shouldn't have been big enough to admit it. Security moved to pursue, but Halpern barked, "Stand down!" His voice echoed through the atrium. "We focus on containment, not capture. Not yet." "But sir," Madsen began. "No. Look around you. The animals aren't fleeing from the variants. They're reacting to something else. The unified cries had faded into a low chorus of unease. Something deeper than fear, anticipation. The facility felt like a pressure cooker holding its breath. Halpern turned to me. "Dr. Halden, Environmental Hub. Now." We hurried through the main corridor. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting quick flashes of amber that made the shadows ripple like moving water. The floor trembled again, gentle as if the facility exhaled. A moment later, a metallic groan echoed through the ducts. Not from movement, from pressure. "Airflow is shifting," I said. "Something's altering the internal pressure gradient." "Sabotage?" Halpern asked. "No, it's too uniform, too systematic." The environmental hub was designed like the heart of the compound, regulating airflow, temperature, filtration, and chemical stabilization across every enclosure. If something disrupted it, every habitat would feel the effects simultaneously. When we reached the hub, the door was open. Not broken, not forced. Open. That was worse. The central console glowed red across all displays: pressure irregularities, oxygen variance, moisture inconsistencies. But nothing catastrophic. Nothing that should trigger alarms. Just enough to destabilize highly sensitive organisms. Enough to frighten them. "Someone was here," Klein whispered. "Or something," Halpern corrected. I stepped forward and immediately saw the problem. Along the floor, in thin, glistening trails, were the same streaks of viscous fluid I'd found in Sector D. But here they were arranged almost deliberately, curving lines converging at the intake grate, like the start of a pattern. I crouched for a closer look. "These aren't random movement trails," I said slowly. "They're mapping." "Mapping what?" Klein asked, voice strained. "Airflow," I said. "They're sensing it, following it. They're learning how the building breathes." Halpern went still. And then, faintly, from inside the intake grate, came a sound. 3 taps. A pause. 3 more. Not from claws. From something striking metal intentionally. A response. My skin prickled. Something in the ducts was communicating with the variants. Something bigger. Before I could warn the others, the pressure monitor spiked. Oxygen levels dipping in 3 sectors simultaneously. C7's zone. B4's. And the aviary. "What the hell?" Klein began. A piercing shriek cut through the speakers, not from the alarm system, but from the animals themselves. All 3 sectors erupted at once. We watched the monitors as C7's massive frame slammed against the back of its enclosure. Not violently, instinctively, trying to get as far as possible from the ventilation shaft. B4's herd clustered into a trembling mass. The aviary birds were flinging themselves at the walls, desperate to climb higher, away from the ducts below. Something was moving through the ventilation network. Not D12, not F9. Something that scared apex predators and burrowing variants alike. Something that understood the facility's airflow patterns well enough to use them. The pipes vibrated again. Deep, resonant, like a territorial call. And then, through the main conduit overhead, a low, dragging sound passed above us. Not fast, not small. A heavy body scraping through metal. Halpern whispered, not to us, but to himself. "How many breaches do we have?" The answer came from the ducts. A guttural exhale, wet, slow, almost human in rhythm. Every monitor in the hub flickered, and the building seemed to whisper back. Not a word, just breath. Breathing in, breathing out, matching ours, learning us. The breathing in the ducts wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It had weight, density, a presence that pushed into the room like humidity before a storm. Every person in the environmental hub went still. Even the machinery seemed to hesitate, systems humming at a fraction of their normal rhythm, as if the facility recognized something it was never built to accommodate. The sound traveled overhead slow, dragging, a mass shifting against metal walls. Whatever it was, it moved with confidence, purpose, not frantic like an escaped specimen, not confused like an animal in the wrong environment. It knew the ventilation system the way a scavenger knows the inside of a carcass. "Track it," Halpern ordered, voice tight. Denton was already on the console, fingers tapping rapidly. "Trying. Thermals inconsistent. Keeps spiking then dropping. It's like the ducks are masking it." "Masking," Klein echoed. I stepped beside Denton, scanning the fluctuating signatures. He wasn't wrong. Every time the heat pattern stabilized enough to read, it vanished into the ambient temperature of the ducts, as if the creature could regulate its body heat to blend with its surroundings. "Adaptive thermoregulation," I murmured. "Some amphibians can modulate surface temperature, but not like this. Not this fast." Halpern's voice lowered. "Dr. Halden, is this the same organism that interacted with D12 and F9? "I don't know," I said, "but the variants are responding to it. They're not avoiding each other. They're avoiding whatever is in there." The overhead duct vibrated again. A dull reverberation crawled through the ceiling grid, down the support beams, into the soles of our boots. The animals across the facility reacted instantly. Their cries crackled through the speakers like feedback. Panicked, terrified, synchronized. Halpern's jaw clenched. "We need eyes in the ducts. Now." Denton shook his head. "Cameras are blind." Something smeared secretion across the internal lenses. Every single one in the north spine. That wasn't accidental. That was deliberate. The breathing resumed, this time longer, deeper. One inhale, one exhale. A rhythm steady enough to mimic something sleeping. Except it was moving. "Everyone out," Halpern ordered abruptly. "We regroup in Command Room B. We need a full internal lockdown before this spreads." We left the environmental hub quickly but without breaking into a run. Running triggers predator instinct in certain species, and none of us were willing to test the instincts of whatever was in the ducts. The hallways seemed darker than before, though the lights hadn't changed. The shadows felt deeper, moving with us instead of around us. The moment we passed the threshold of the hub, the metal behind us groaned. A low shudder ran down the corridor, rattling the air vents. Something heavy shifted in the duct directly above the hub, not toward us, but toward Sector F. F9's wing. As we hurried through the central hallway, Klein walked beside me, breathing fast. "Sam, this thing, if it's not one of ours." "It is one of ours," I said, "but none of the specimens match." "They do now." He swallowed hard. "Are you saying it mutated?" "Over hours." "No organism changes like this naturally," I said, "but D12 and F9 already exhibited rapid neuroadaptive responses. Add environmental stress, airflow changes, fear triggers, they might be responding to something we missed, or reacting to each other in ways we've never observed." "You don't think this is cross-species influence?" "I don't know what I think. But the truth had already formed inside me like ice. The variants weren't the cause of the disturbance. They were reacting to it. We reached Command Room B just as Halpern keyed in his clearance. The door opened, and a wave of cold, filtered air washed over us. The control screens inside glowed with an angry mosaic of warnings. Not alarms yet. Just dozens of small irregularities adding up to a system in biological distress. Inside, the operator on duty, Carver, stood up the moment we entered. "Director, we've got a problem." "Which one?" Halpern muttered. Carver pointed to the live feed from Sector F. Thermal picked up movement inside the primary water channel. Large. Not F9's profile. How large? Halpern asked. Carver hesitated. Big enough to displace the entire channel volume. The room went silent. The water channel was reinforced. Steel, not acrylic. It existed for cleaning runoff, not housing anything significant. Nothing should have been able to move through it except water and small aquatic specimens. It breached containment? Halpern asked. Not in the traditional sense, Carver said. It didn't break anything. It just moved through it. I stepped forward. Show me. Carver magnified the thermal feed. The channel glowed in shades of blue and green, cold. Then, from the right edge of the image, a massive bloom of yellow swept across the channel like a rolling wave. Not fast, not slow, just steady. When the bloom reached the midpoint, the entire channel shook. Not water, body mass. Something was crawling through the water channel system. Something far bigger than D12 or F9. A second later, Sector F speakers blared with overlapping cries. Deep bellows from the crocodilian variants, mixed with high-pitched squeals from smaller amphibious specimens. Anxiety, panic. Then the largest enclosure, F-alpha, registered a shockwave. The animal inside, an armored salamander variant the size of a motorcycle, hurled itself against the far wall, not attacking, fleeing, running from the channel, running from what was coming through it. Seal F-alpha, Halpern ordered. Carver's hands shook as they flew over the console. Trying, damn it. System isn't responding. The thermal bloom surged again. This time, the waveform pattern changed, narrowing, compressing, moving vertically within the water channel. Climbing toward the ventilation ducts. My blood went cold. It's using the entire facility like a circulatory system, I whispered. Ducts, pipes, channels, just testing every route, mapping them, learning them. Why? Klein asked. Before I could answer, the lights in the command room flickered violently. A deep metallic growl traveled through the ceiling above us. Not animal, not mechanical, something between. The ceiling grid bowed downward a fraction of an inch. Then another, a ripple, something moving across the top of the room, slow and heavy enough to deform steel. Carver whispered, "It's right above us." The pipes vibrated. 3 pulses, a pause. 3 more, matching what we'd been hearing all day, matching us. And then, directly over our heads, the breathing returned, slow, measured, familiar in the worst possible way. Not because I recognized the creature, but because it was breathing in rhythm with us, listening, counting, learning. No one in the command room spoke. The breathing above us was steady, deliberate, like something pacing across the ceiling tiles on the other side of a thin membrane. The metal grid dipped again, a shallow bend, then released as whatever was up there shifted its weight. The room's lighting cast trembling shadows across the floor, each vibration sending a ripple through the fluorescent hum. Denton raised his tranquilizer rifle toward the ceiling, but Halpern grabbed the barrel and forced it down. "Do not fire," he said in a low voice. "Not when we don't know what's behind that panel. The structural beams can't take impact this close to the main power conduits." A moment later, the breathing stopped. Not faded, stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It felt like the moment before a predator lunges, except nothing lunged. Nothing moved. The pipes overhead held still. "Track it," Halpern said. Carver's hands shook slightly as he tapped through the thermal grid. I'm not seeing it." The overhead ducts just went cold. "Cold how?" I asked. "Ambient cold. Like nothing passed through at all." It was regulating its temperature again. Learning. The building vibrated with a distant thud. somewhere in Sector B. Then another, deeper from Sector C. Animals responding, not randomly, in a pattern that followed the creature's path through the ducts. "It's moving," I said softly, "but we're not going to see it. Not unless it wants us to." Halpern turned sharply. "Dr. Halden, if this organism is a product of our specimens, what is its purpose? Its behavior pattern? Its biological motive?" I swallowed hard. All my training in evolutionary stress responses, cross-mutation behavior, environmental adaptation, none of it had prepared me for something evolving in real time. "I don't think it has a fully formed motive," I said, "but it's exploring, mapping, testing how the facility responds to pressure, noise, airflow, temperature. It's assessing its environment." "Like a territorial species?" Denton asked. "Like an apex species," I corrected, trying to understand the ecosystem it just emerged into. A new vibration rattled the command room, this time in the walls. Thump, 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 slow, heavy, growing closer. The animals across the facility erupted again, their cries broadcasting over the speakers like rolling thunder. I recognized patterns, calls associated with alarm, distress, and in rare cases, submission. They weren't fighting the disturbance. They were bowing to it. A sudden crackle burst through the intercom. "Command, this is Sector F security. We've got full structural movement in the water channel. Something's forcing its way into the drainage core." The transmission cut out abruptly. "Drainage core," Klein whispered. "Why the hell would it go there?" My heart dropped. "Because that's where airflow is most concentrated. The entire facility ventilates through the drainage juncture. It's the center." Halpern stiffened. "You're telling me the organism is heading to the central ventilation nexus?" "It's the best vantage point," I said. "Temperature gradients, airflow control, environmental variation. It's where it can sense the entire compound at once." "And if it reaches it?" Denton asked quietly. Before I could answer, the facility answered for me. The lights flickered, then dimmed. Not a full blackout, just enough for every shadow to sharpen into something predatory. Metal groaned deep beneath us. The floor trembled. Every console in the command room flashed a simultaneous warning. "Ventilation override detected." Carver's voice cracked. It's manipulating airflow. Somehow, it's forcing a reverse pull through the ducts." A reverse pull meant the airflow would shift direction, something only possible through manual override. But this wasn't manual. Something in the ducts was physically altering airflow by blocking and releasing ducts in rapid sequence. "God," I breathed. "It's learning how to control the air pressure." "Why would it want that?" Klein asked. The answer came immediately. From every speaker in the facility, a single deep groan vibrated outward, low frequency, resonant, moving through air like a wave. It wasn't a vocalization. It was the sound of air being forced through an organism, not by it. Like the facility's ventilation system had just inhaled through something alive. The animals responded instantly. C7 roared in terror. The aviary shrieked. Sector B went silent, dead silent, the kind of silence that only happens when prey freezes in collective fear. It wasn't hunting. It was announcing itself. Halpern moved toward the door. "Everyone with me. We're going to the Nexus." Denton grabbed his arm. "Sir, with all due respect, you go down there, you're walking into the center of its territory." "We don't have a choice," Halpern said, pulling free. "If it gains full control of the ventilation system, we lose containment." He wasn't wrong. Airflow determined temperature, humidity, scent, chemical distribution, every factor that kept the specimen stable. If those variables changed, the facility would become hostile to every organism inside it. including us. We exited the command room carefully. The corridor lights sputtered like they were struggling for breath, dimming just long enough to let darkness get comfortable before brightening again. Every pulse of light matched the rhythm in the pipes. 3 pulses. A pause. 3 more. The building felt alive. Halfway to the nexus, we heard something in the walls beside us. Wet, dragging movement, slow and confident. Denton steadied his rifle, teeth clenched. "It's following us," he whispered. "No," I said. "It's guiding us." The realization hit me so hard I stopped walking. Everybody turned. "This isn't random," I said quietly. "It's been shaping the airflow, controlling animal movements, influencing structural patterns. It's forcing us toward the nexus because that's where it wants us." "Why?" Klein asked. Before I could respond, the air pressure dropped sharply. A gust of cold air slammed through the corridor. Then another groan reverberated overhead, deeper than before, so low it made my vision blur for a moment. The duct above us expanded, pushed outward by something moving through it. "Move!" Halpern ordered. We ran the remaining distance to the nexus hatch. The door was sealed, pressure-locked from the inside. Carver swiped his badge. Nothing. Denton pulled at the manual release. Nothing. The pressure lock wasn't stuck. It was being held. From the inside, Halpern stepped back, breathing hard. "Dr. Halden, if it's in there, if it's taken control of the ventilation core, what does that mean for the facility?" The answer formed slowly, heavy as lead. "It means," I said, voice barely above a whisper, "it's ready to reshape the environment to suit itself." The duct overhead buckled. A low exhale drifted down the corridor. Then a sound came from the other side of the sealed door. A slow, deliberate scraping, as if something was drawing its fingers across metal, counting the number of people standing outside. The scraping on the other side of the nexus door was slow, almost thoughtful, too precise to be random. Each drag of its fingers vibrated through the metal, the kind of resonance that told you the organism wasn't just touching the door. It was measuring it, testing thickness, response, echo, learning what separated it from us. Klein backed a full step away, his breath shuddering. "It knows we're here. It's known for a while," I said quietly. Halpern stared at the door, his expression pulled tight. "Options. Now." Carver swiped the console beside the door again, but the interface remained unresponsive. "The pressure lock is still engaged. It won't release control. Not to us." That meant the organism was inside the nexus chamber, or close enough within the ducts to manipulate airflow in and out of it. With the environmental hub compromised, the nexus was the only place it could be centralizing its control. The scraping stopped. For a moment, the corridor fell into an unnatural stillness. Even the emergency lights seemed to hold their flicker, frozen mid-pulse. Then, 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps. The same pattern the animals had been responding to. The same rhythm in the ducts. The same pulse that matched the airflow manipulation. "Why does it keep doing that?" Denton whispered. "It's the building's pulse," I said. "Or at least the pattern it recognizes as one. Airflow cycling, pressure shifts, structural vibrations. It's mimicking the facility's natural rhythm." "But for what?" Klein asked. "To blend with it," I said. "To become part of it." Before anyone could absorb that, the air pressure around us dropped again. Sharp, sudden, like someone opened a door to a storm. Papers fluttered. Dust swirled. The lights overhead flickered so violently I thought they might burn out entirely. Something inside the nexus inhaled. The sound wasn't loud, but the pressure shift that came with it bent the emergency strip lights along the floor. Carver stumbled backward. It's drawing airflow through every available vent. We're getting collapse pressure in the ducts. This is going to destabilize the whole building if it keeps pulling like that. We have to vent the system externally, I said. Force fresh air in, flush the internal network, then reset the regulators. Carver nodded frantically. Yes, yes. I can redirect through the auxiliary outflow. Do it, Halpern said. Carver's hands flew over the handheld console. He routed the airflow to the external exhaust channels. Giant vents high on the eastern wall of the compound meant to expel chemical residue during decontamination cycles. The pressure in the corridor equalized slightly. Then the Nexus door shuddered. Not from an impact, from resistance. It was refusing the redirection. No, Carver breathed. It's blocking the outflow vents. Something's physically obstructing them. I felt a chill run deep beneath my ribs. Obstructing the vents meant the organism wasn't just in the Nexus ducts. It was everywhere. Dr. Halden, Halpern said, turning to me sharply. Could this organism be using molted tissue to seal off sections of the ventilation network? Yes, I said, the word falling out heavier than I intended. The secretion we've seen, the elasticity, if enough of it accumulates, it could block the airflow, redirect it, even shape pressure zones. And suffocate the facility, Carver whispered. No, I said. Not suffocate. Control. The lights flickered again, once, twice, and then went out entirely. The corridor plunged into darkness. We didn't breathe. A second later, the emergency strips along the floor came back on. Not amber this time, but deep blue. A color I had never seen triggered in my 8 years working here. Why blue? Denton whispered. Blue means manual override from inside the Nexus, Carver said. Someone or something is controlling the emergency system. Then a new sound drifted from the darkness above us. Not breathing. Movement. Wet, deliberate, shifting weight across metal supports. The organism had left the Nexus chamber, and now it was above us again. Denton aimed his rifle upward, but I reached out and pushed the barrel down. Firing into the ducts now could rupture the ventilation network and send shrapnel raining down the corridor. We needed to move, but which direction was safe? A deep metallic groan answered for us, reverberating through the ceiling like a warning. Then, a sudden impact slammed into the duct overhead. Dust cascaded down. The ceiling grid bent inward. Another impact. Another bend. It wasn't testing now. It was pushing. Everyone back, Halpern ordered. We retreated down the corridor. A third slam hit the duct, snapping a section of the grid loose. A panel dropped to the floor with a clatter. Cold air surged downward like a breath. For one terrible moment, I expected the organism to drop through the opening. But instead, only silence. The creature moved away, shifting horizontally through the duct like a massive, fluid weight sliding across steel. It was traveling toward the west wing, toward the holding sectors, toward the animals. What is it doing? Klein asked, shaking slightly. It's moving between pressure points, I said. It's following the strongest airflow channels. It's reading the facility the way we read a map. Why go to the holding wings? Denton asked. I felt nausea twist inside me as a deeper realization settled. It's not going to them, I said. It's going where the animals have the strongest reactions. It's reading their fear responses. Halpern stared at me. Meaning, it's using them as sensors. The corridor vibrated with distant impacts. Sector B this time. Heavy ones. Then came a rolling wave of animal cries. A chorus of panic that moved from B to C to the aviary, traveling like a shockwave. It's moving under them, I whispered, through the lower ducts, triggering them, testing how they react. mapping their stress behavior across the entire compound. Denton exhaled shakily. Why? What's the point? I looked toward the dark ceiling, listening to the growing series of thuds and the escalating cries of the animals. It's not just learning the structure, I said. It's learning the ecosystem. The lights flickered again as the ducks above us groaned. And then, the facility's main alarm began to wail. Not from damage, not from a breach alert, from internal environmental collapse. Carver stared down at his console, face draining of color. Director, if it continues manipulating airflow this fast, we're going to lose temperature integrity across half the facility. What does that mean? Klein asked. The scraping on the other side of the Nexus door was slow, almost thoughtful, too precise to be random. Each drag of its fingers vibrated through the metal, the kind of resonance that told you the organism wasn't just touching the door. It was measuring it, testing thickness, response, echo, learning what separated it from us. Klein backed a full step away, his breath shuddering. It knows we're here. It's known for a while, I said quietly. Halpern stared at the door, his expression pulled tight. Options. Now. Carver swiped the console beside the door again, but the interface remained unresponsive. The pressure lock is still engaged. It won't release control. Not to us. That meant the organism was inside the Nexus chamber, or close enough within the ducts to manipulate airflow in and out of it. With the environmental hub compromised, the Nexus was the only place it could be centralizing its control. The scraping stopped. For a moment, the corridor fell into an unnatural stillness. Even the emergency lights seemed to hold their flicker, frozen mid-pulse. Then, 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps. The same pattern the animals had been responding to. The same rhythm in the ducts. The same pulse that matched the airflow manipulation. Why does it keep doing that? Denton whispered. It's the building's pulse, I said. Or at least the pattern it recognizes as one. Airflow cycling, pressure shifts, structural vibrations. It's mimicking the facility's natural rhythm. But for what? Klein asked. To blend with it, I said. To become part of it. Before anyone could absorb that, the air pressure around us dropped again. Sharp, sudden, like someone opened a door to a storm. Papers fluttered. Dust swirled. The lights overhead flickered so violently I thought they might burn out entirely. Something inside the Nexus inhaled. The sound wasn't loud, but the pressure shift that came with it bent the emergency strip lights along the floor. Carver stumbled backward. It's drawing airflow through every available vent. We're getting collapse pressure in the ducts. This is going to destabilize the whole building if it keeps pulling like that. We have to vent the system externally, I said. Force fresh air in, flush the internal network, then reset the regulators. Carver nodded frantically. Yes, yes. I can redirect through the auxiliary outflow. Do it, Halpern said. Carver's hands flew over the handheld console. He routed the airflow to the external exhaust channels. Giant vents high on the eastern wall of the compound meant to expel chemical residue during decontamination cycles. The pressure in the corridor equalized slightly. Then the Nexus door shuddered. Not from an impact, from resistance. It was refusing the redirection. No, Carver breathed. It's blocking the outflow vents. Something's physically obstructing them. I felt a chill run deep beneath my ribs. Obstructing the vents meant the organism wasn't just in the Nexus ducts. It was everywhere. Dr. Halden, Halpern said, turning to me sharply. Could this organism be using molted tissue to seal off sections of the ventilation network? Yes, I said, the word falling out heavier than I intended. The secretion we've seen, the elasticity, if enough of it accumulates, it could block the airflow, redirect it, even shape pressure zones. And suffocate the facility, Carver whispered. No, I said. Not suffocate. Control. The lights flickered again, once, twice, and then went out entirely. The corridor plunged into darkness. We didn't breathe. A second later, the emergency strips along the floor came back on. Not amber this time, but deep blue. A color I had never seen triggered in my 8 years working here. Why blue? Denton whispered. Blue means manual override from inside the Nexus, Carver said. Someone or something is controlling the emergency system. Then a new sound drifted from the darkness above us. Not breathing. Movement. Wet, deliberate, shifting weight across metal supports. The organism had left the Nexus chamber, and now it was above us again. Denton aimed his rifle upward, but I reached out and pushed the barrel down. Firing into the ducts now could rupture the ventilation network and send shrapnel raining down the corridor. We needed to move, but which direction was safe? A deep metallic groan answered for us, reverberating through the ceiling like a warning. Then, a sudden impact slammed into the duct overhead. Dust cascaded down. The ceiling grid bent inward. Another impact. Another bend. It wasn't testing now. It was pushing. Everyone back, Halpern ordered. We retreated down the corridor. A third slam hit the duct, snapping a section of the grid loose. A panel dropped to the floor with a clatter. Cold air surged downward like a breath. For one terrible moment, I expected the organism to drop through the opening. But instead, only silence. The creature moved away, shifting horizontally through the duct like a massive, fluid weight sliding across steel. It was traveling toward the West Wing, toward the holding sectors, toward the animals. What is it doing? Klein asked, shaking slightly. It's moving between pressure points, I said. It's following the strongest airflow channels. It's reading the facility the way we read a map. Why go to the holding wings? Denton asked. I felt nausea twist inside me as a deeper realization settled. It's not going to them, I said. It's going where the animals have the strongest reactions. It's reading their fear responses. Halpern stared at me. Meaning, it's using them as sensors. The corridor vibrated with distant impacts. Sector B this time. Heavy ones. Then came a rolling wave of animal cries. A chorus of panic that moved from B to C to the aviary, traveling like a shockwave. It's moving under them, I whispered, through the lower ducts, triggering them, testing how they react, mapping their stress behavior across the entire compound. Denton exhaled shakily. Why? What's the point? I looked toward the dark ceiling, listening to the growing series of thuds and the escalating cries of the animals. It's not just learning the structure, I said. It's learning the ecosystem. The lights flickered again as the ducts above us groaned. And then, the facility's main alarm began to wail. Not from damage, not from a breach alert, from internal environmental collapse. Carver stared down at his console, face draining of color. Director, if it continues manipulating airflow this fast, we're going to lose temperature integrity across half the facility. What does that mean? Klein asked. The alarm's wail wasn't the sharp, panicked shriek of a breach call. It was lower, steady, like a warning that had no interest in urgency. A sound for the staff, yes, but almost more for the organism itself. The building's failing environmental systems echoed through the corridors like a long exhale. Every light pulsed in sync with the ventilation rhythm, turning the hallway into a flickering artery. Carver's handheld console buzzed violently. Temperatures destabilizing across sectors C and D. Humidity rising in the aviary. And Sector F, oh God, Sector F just dropped 5 degrees in under 30 seconds. That's impossible, Denton snapped. Cooling systems can't change that fast. They didn't, I said quietly. It did. The ducts above us groaned, deep, warping the ceiling panels. Something massive shifted its weight, crawling farther west. The animals responded instantly, their cries pitched into raw panic, rolling through the facility like an avalanche. Then silence. A cold, absolute silence that pressed into our ears like altitude. "That's not good," Klein whispered. "That's not good at all." We rounded the corner toward the west wing. Emergency strips pulsed on the floor, guiding us like runway lights. The walls vibrated with a new rhythm, slower than before, heavier. A pressure fluctuation that made the air taste metallic. "Sector B just lost oxygen balance," Carver said, voice cracking. "Levels dropped, then corrected on their own." "On their own," Halpern repeated sharply. Carver stared at the readout. Something rebalanced it faster than our system could, like it anticipated the correction before it happened. My pulse thudded painfully. It's not adjusting airflow randomly anymore. It's forecasting changes, predicting them. "Predicting," Denton echoed. "As in thinking ahead?" I nodded once, my throat tight. "It's learning feedback loops. A living organism that can adapt its environment instantaneously has the ability to override us." We reached Sector C's junction as a series of loud crashes erupted inside. Animals slammed into walls. Metal clanged. Something collided with reinforced glass hard enough to spiderweb it. "C7, I breathed. "It's panicking." Halpern moved toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. "No, you open that and the shift in air pressure could trigger an enclosure breach. The animal is reacting to the ducts above it, not us." Klein's breathing quickened. "Sam, if that thing moves into the predator wing—" "It already has," I said. The ceiling above Sector C bulged downward. A deep, dragging exhale pressed through the metal, vibrating straight through the soles of our boots. Then another. The organism paused, as if sensing our presence. Everyone froze. No one moved. No one breathed. The duct above us creaked. Slowly, carefully, like it was lowering itself to listen. "Don't move," I whispered. But the duct bent farther, 2 inches, then 3, until dust rained down in a soft cascade. Denton's rifle trembled in his hands, the barrel angled upward. "Hold," Halpern whispered sharply. The metal above us bent again. And then, a shriek erupted from inside C7's enclosure. Not a roar, not aggression, a cry of pure terror. Something inside the duct responded immediately. The exhale sharpened, turned into a scraping sound. Not claws, skin against metal, a large body shifting direction. C7 drew its attention, I murmured. "It's moving toward the predator sector now." "Then we divert it," Halpern said. "We can't allow it to destabilize that wing." "How do you divert something that controls the airflow?" Klein asked. A terrible idea formed inside me. "Give it something to follow." Everyone looked at me. "Sam," Halpern said cautiously. "Explain." "It reacts strongest to movement and fear signals," I said. "If we create a controlled disturbance, something loud, something directed, it might follow the vibration pattern instead of the animals." Denton blinked. "You want us to bait it?" "Yes," I said, "but in a way that keeps it away from the enclosures." "Where would we lead it?" Klein asked. There was only one answer. "The drainage access corridor," I said. "It's reinforced, narrow, no living specimens. If we can trap it there, even temporarily, we regain control of the airflow." Halpern hesitated only a second. Do it. Carver stared at me. How do you propose we make it follow us and not kill us? We stay close to the structural beams, I said. Those ducts aren't strong enough to support its full weight directly above reinforced framing. It'll move adjacent, track us, not drop on us. You hope, Denton muttered. It's our only shot. Halpern motioned sharply. Move. We began down the corridor, not running, but moving fast enough to create rhythmic vibrations. Denton struck the wall lightly with his rifle, but every few steps. Tap, tap, tap. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. The building listened. The ducts overhead responded instantly. A scraping, a shift, a drawn-out inhale. It was following. The emergency lights strobed with our footsteps, as if the facility itself was pulsing with the creature. Sector B erupted in a fresh wave of cries as we passed it. The ceiling above the corridor bulged, dragging downward with the weight of the organism tracking our path. Denton hit the wall again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, the reply came as a deep resonance through the ducts, matching our rhythm. Sam, Klein whispered shakily. It's mimicking us. Yes, I said. That's why this works. We reached the final turn toward the drainage access corridor. It stretched ahead of us, long, narrow, lined with structural braces. Perfect choke point, a place where the ducts ran tight overhead. Take positions, Halpern ordered. Denton slammed the wall one last time, hard enough to echo through the ventilation system. Then, silence. Total, suffocating silence. Even the animals were quiet. Above us, the duct expanded outward, metal creaking in protest. Something massive was preparing to drop its full weight into this corridor. This was it. Back, Halpern hissed. We retreated toward the drainage doorway. The duct bulged again, and again, until it looked moments from rupturing. Then came the exhale. A hot, damp breath pushed through the ceiling grid. The panel above us cracked. And slowly, deliberately, the metal began to split. Not from force, from pressure. The creature was widening the duct. To enter, my pulse hammered painfully. We need that door open, Halpern shouted. Carver rushed to the panel, swiping his badge. Access denied. Airflow override in progress. It's locked, Carver screamed. It has the ventilation priority. The ceiling tore wider. A long, glistening limb, glistening with fresh mold, slipped through the crack. 3 elongated digits found the grid, curled around it, tested it. The metal bent like plastic. Sam, Klein shouted. What do we do? I stared at the creature forcing its way into the corridor, realizing the worst possible truth. It didn't fall for the bait. It herded us here, just like it herded the animals. It wasn't following our disturbance. It was guiding us into a narrow, predictable space. A trap. The ceiling ripped open, and the creature inhaled, slowly, deliberately, as if smelling every one of us before deciding what to do next. The creature's inhale pulled the air out of the corridor like a tide. My ears popped. Carver stumbled backward as loose papers fluttered past him and vanished into the darkness above. The emergency strips flickered wildly, the pulses no longer rhythmic, now chaotic, spasming in sync with the airflow distortion. The creature lowered more of its body through the widening duct. Not in a drop, but in a controlled descent like something accustomed to vertical surfaces. Skin glistened with a translucent sheen, fresh molt still wet. Its musculature moved beneath it in ways no quadruped or amphibian should. Not because it was supernatural, but because the environmental pressures and stressors in this facility had shaped it faster than any recorded mutation. It wasn't a new species. It was the sum of everything we failed to understand. Back! Halpern barked, but we were already pressed against the drainage access door. The metal grid shrieked as another section gave way. The creature's spine, long, flexible, segmented, slid through the gap like a thick rope of living muscle. Denton lifted his rifle again. "Don't," I said sharply. "If you hit the structural beams." "I know what I'm doing," he whispered, his voice shaking as he steadied the barrel. But the creature wasn't lunging. It wasn't attacking. It finished lowering itself halfway into the corridor, then paused, its elongated digits hovering inches from the floor, testing the air. Not for threat, for temperature, for pressure, for our placement. It was learning us. The air pressure shifted again. The corridor tightened around us, every breath suddenly more shallow. Carver choked on his own inhale. "What's it doing?" Klein gasped. "It's manipulating airflow around its body," I said, "creating a vacuum pocket so we can't move without disrupting it." "A trap," Denton muttered. "No," I said, "a reaction. It's responding to our fear. It's predicting our next steps." "Then what the hell does it want?" Klein demanded. A deep vibration trembled through the concrete beneath us. Not from the creature, from the building. Sector B's alarm blared with a metallic shriek. Immediately after, Sector C activated its environmental warning. Then the aviary. Then F-Alpha. A cascade of alarms echoed through the facility like dominoes. The entire compound was falling out of environmental stability. Halpern pushed past us and slammed his fist onto the drainage access panel again. "Open, damn you, open!" Red text blinked back. "Access overridden. Environmental priority lock." "It's sealed everything," Carver whispered. "It's forcing environmental resets, shifting humidity, temperature, oxygen." "For what?" Halpern growled. "For optimization," I said numbly. "It's trying to stabilize conditions for itself." The creature responded to the alarms with a low, vibrating exhale. Not aggression, awareness. It understood what we were seeing. It knew what it was doing. Its head moved next, emerging from the widened duct. Not fully, but enough that we saw its sensory structures. No eyes, no overt facial features. Just a smooth, contoured skull with vibration-sensitive ridges along the sides, like the amplified echolocation plates of D12 fused with the thermal receptors of F9. It oriented toward Halpern first, tilting slightly as though listening to the frequency of his breath. Halpern froze. "Stay still," I whispered. "It's mapping." The creature turned toward Denton next, then Klein, then Carver. Finally, it oriented toward me. The ridges along its skull pulsed, soft waves of movement, like gills responding to current. It recognized my voice. From the ducts, from the corridors, from hours of involuntary environmental feedback. It had been learning the entire day who we were. It shifted closer, digits touching the floor for the first time. The impact was soft, but the vibration that followed wasn't. A pulse rippled through the corridor, matching the facility's earlier rhythm but slower. Intentional. A signal. I swallowed hard. "It's communicating. How the hell do we answer?" Klein whispered. Before I could respond, the entire facility jolted violently. An abrupt shift in pressure that knocked Denton into the wall and forced Halpern to grab the railing. Carver's console shrieked with a warning. "Complete ventilation override," he shouted. "It has full control. Oxygen dropping in sectors D through G. Temperature spike in A. Sam. It's recalibrating the entire network." The creature didn't react to Carver's panic. It watched me. Its long digits flexed against the metal. The floor vibrated under its weight. Not heavy, but resonant. An organism this newly mutated shouldn't have been capable of strategic environmental control. A horrifying question formed inside my mind. What if this isn't the mutation? I whispered. But the response to one. Halpern turned sharply. Explain. It didn't emerge from one specimen. It emerged from all of them. Not physically, but behaviorally, environmentally, a stress-induced evolutionary convergence. The facility acted as a crucible. You're saying, Klein stammered, we created this? No, I said. Nature did. The moment we contained animals from collapsing ecosystems, animals already under unimaginable stress, we created a closed system of competing adaptive pressures. This, I gestured toward the creature, is what happens when environmental signals align across species. The creature lowered itself another inch, listening, understanding. Then, the temperature shifted around us, rising 5 degrees in seconds. My lungs tightened. A low hum filled the corridor. Sam, Carver said, voice trembling, if it keeps changing temperature this fast, the specimens will destabilize, I said. Every mutation will accelerate. Some will become volatile. Denton lifted his rifle again. We end this now. No! I started, but it was too late. Denton fired. The tranquilizer dart struck the creature's flank. The impact barely moved it, but something else did. The creature inhaled sharply, its first real sign of alarm. Then everything happened at once. The ducts above us imploded, sucking inward with a violent whoosh. The corridor lights shattered. A shockwave propelled dust and metal shards through the air, throwing us to the ground. The creature recoiled upward, pulling its body toward the duct like a snake retreating into a burrow. Except it wasn't fleeing. It was redirecting. The airflow reversed in an instant, creating a vortex that tore the remaining ceiling panels free. Hot air blasted upward and outward. Then, the alarms stopped. Every single one. Across the facility. A silence so absolute followed that it hurt. Carver looked at the console through shaking fingers. Environmental system reset. All variables stable. He swallowed hard. Sam. It fixed everything. No one spoke. The creature disappeared into the ventilation darkness, leaving behind only the wet sheen of its molt. A final exhale drifted through the ducts. Not hostile, not frightened, complete, satisfied. Halpern stared at the broken ceiling. Where is it now? I listened. I heard nothing. No scraping, no breathing, no movement. But then, from deep within the compound, a long, low vibration rolled through the structure. Not chaotic, not random. A heartbeat, the facility's new one. I don't know, I said quietly, but it's part of the building now. And this was still the same day. The day something evolved faster than we could understand. The day the zoo learned how to breathe on its own.